Okay, so just for a quick review, we'll read through the verses up to text 7 and then text 8, which we start today. Text 1. A sober person who can tolerate the urge to speak, the mind's demands, the actions of anger, and the urges of the tongue, belly, and genitals, is qualified to make disciples all over the world. One's devotional service is spoiled when he becomes too entangled in the following 6 activities: eating more than necessary or collecting more funds than required, over-endeavoring for mundane things that are very difficult to obtain, talking unnecessarily about mundane subject matters, practicing the scriptural rules and regulations only for the sake of following them and not for the sake of spiritual advancement, or rejecting the rules and regulations of the scriptures and working independently or whimsically. 5. Associating with worldly-minded persons who are not interested in Krishna consciousness. And 6. Being greedy for mundane achievements. Text 3. There are 6 principles favorable to the execution of pure devotional service. 1. Being enthusiastic. 2. Endeavoring with confidence. 3. Being patient. 4. Acting according to regulated principles such as Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu Smaranam, hearing, chanting, and remembering Krishna, abandoning the association of non-devotees, and 6. Following in the footsteps of the previous acharyas. These 6 principles undoubtedly assure the complete success of pure devotional service. 4. Offering gifts in charity, accepting charitable gifts, revealing one's mind in confidence, inquiring confidentially, accepting prasad and offering prasad are the 6 symptoms of love shared by one devotee and another. One should mentally honor the devotee who chants the holy name of Lord Krishna. One should offer humble obeisances to the devotee who has undergone spiritual initiation, diksha, and is engaged in worshipping the deity. And one should associate with and faithfully serve that pure devotee who has advanced in undeviated devotional service and whose heart is completely devoid of the propensity to criticize others. Being situated in his original Krishna conscious position, a pure devotee does not identify with the body. Such a devotee should not be seen from a materialistic point of view. Indeed, one should overlook a devotee's having a body born in a low family, a body with a bad complexion, a deformed body, or a diseased or infirm body. According to ordinary vision, such imperfections may seem prominent in the body of a pure devotee. But despite such seeming defects, the body of a pure devotee cannot be polluted. It is exactly like the waters of the Ganges, which sometimes during the rainy season are full of bubbles, foam, and mud. The Ganges waters do not become polluted. Those who are advanced in spiritual understanding will bathe in the Ganges without considering the condition of the water. The holy name, character, pastimes, and activities of Krishna are all transcendently sweet like sugar candy. Although the tongue of one afflicted by the jaundice of avidya, ignorance, cannot taste anything sweet, it is wonderful that simply by carefully chanting these sweet names every day, a natural relish awakens within his tongue, and his disease is gradually destroyed at the root. Okay, so now today's verse. Yes, I was thinking on this verse that this is why we chant every day. That simply by carefully chanting these sweet names every day, a natural relish awakens within the tongue. And now, text 8. Tannama rupa charitadi sikirtanano smrityo kramena rasanama nasi niyojya tishtan vrajeta danuragi jananugami kalam nayeda kilamitya upadesha saram. The essence of all advice is that one should utilize one's full time, 24 hours a day, in nicely chanting and remembering the Lord's divine name, transcendental form, qualities, and eternal pastimes, thereby gradually engaging one's tongue and mind. In this way, one should reside in Braja, Goloka Vrindavan Dham, and serve Krishna under the guidance of devotees. One should follow in the footsteps of the Lord's beloved devotees, who are deeply attached to his devotional service. So this is I had mentioned, now I remember, yes, this is actually so Rupa Goswami wrote 11,000 verses. He summarized them in 11 verses. And then the 11 verses, the most important verse, the essence of all advice, is this one verse. And it's starting with the previous verse was saying that how we have to chant every day, and then a natural relish awakens within us when we seriously and chant for a long period of time, and daily, but also, sincerely, maybe sometimes more, even more than what our daily quota is. And then it says, okay, then it continues. This is a continuation from that previous verse. And it says, the essence of all advice is that do it 24 hours a day. And not just doing it, but nicely. Very important word there, nicely chanting and remembering the Lord's divine name, form, qualities, and eternal pastimes. So many of us may not be able to chant 24 hours a day because we're not on that transcendental level like Haridas Thakur. Although we may be able to chant a lot, but not 24 hours a day. So then we chant as much as we can, at least 16 rounds, but even more. But then the rest of the day, we are engaged in remembering and glorifying the Lord's name, form, qualities, and eternal pastimes, and thereby gradually engaging one's tongue and mind. And then he says, the result of this is that one is residing in Braja, in Golok Vrindavan. And by doing this process, one will then serve Krishna under the guidance of devotees. One will start to serve Krishna under the guidance of an eternal resident of Vrindavan, in his personal service. One is serving Krishna under the guidance of the devotees here in the material world, but then that continues in the spiritual world, where there also we are serving under the guidance of devotees. One should follow in the footsteps of the Lord's beloved devotees who are deeply attached to his devotional service. So, so they are deeply attached to his devotional service because they're attached to serving him in a particular way, and that devotee is then serving in that same mood and that same process. So, from some of you have taken Nectar of Devotion. From Nectar of Devotion, what stage is this describing? What is the result of continuously chanting and hearing about Krishna?
Raganuga Bhakti.
Yes, Raganuga Bhakti, very nice. Very nice to both of you who responded. And under whose guidance is one working in this stage of Raganuga Bhakti and beyond?
The devotee, that
Sadhini
particularly
Shakti.
the relationship.
Yes, but what is the Sanskrit word for that?
Hladini Shakti, Radharani.
That is Radharani, Hladini Shakti. But when we are serving under the guidance of a devotee in Vrindavan Dham to learn how to serve Krishna in that particular mood, what type of a devotee is that?
Uttamadhikari.
They are an Uttamadhikari, yes.
Ragatmika Bhakti.
Yes, Ragatmika Bhakta. So we are doing Raganuga Bhakti under a Ragatmika Bhakta. So right now we are serving under the guidance of a devotee. These devotees are guiding us in the process of sadhana bhakti. Once we realize our eternal relationship with Krishna, let's say our eternal, I'm just saying theoretically, let's say our eternal relationship with Krishna is as a cowherd boy. And that's what is revealed to us. Then we are taking guidance from maybe Sridham, Madhumangal. They are called Ragatmika Bhaktas. and we are taking guidance from them. So 24 hours a day doing this leads to this. And yesterday in Bhagavatam class, we were reading how Prabhupada was saying in the purport that one must be 100% absorbed in a pastime of Krishna. And if one is 100% absorbed in a pastime of Krishna, then one will become on the transcendental level. And he then points out that even if one can continuously just hear one pastime, not just the pastimes, but just one pastime, and one can hear that 24 hours a day. And I was thinking when I was reading that this is referring to Ragatmika Bhakti and Raganuga Bhakti under Ragatmika devotee, because how can you just listen to one pastime all the time? It's when you have a relish, and that relish is to the point where you are meditating on that pastime, because that pastime is connected with your specific taste, rasa, in serving Krishna. So this purport that Prabhupada describes here is very amazing. He talks about all of these things, about serving Krishna in Golok Vrindavan, the 5 rasas, etc. And he says it all starts by training to speak only about Krishna and taste only Krishna prasadam. And the more we have the greed to reach that stage of the realm of Raja, the more we will automatically be careful and be greedy to only think about Krishna so that we can reach to that stage. A devotee should always reside in the transcendental realm of Raja and always engage in Krishna Smaranam Janam Chasya Preshtham, the remembrance of Sri Krishna and his beloved associates. By following in the footsteps of such associates and by entering under their eternal guidance, one can acquire an intense desire to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And by entering under their eternal guidance. So the Ragatmika Bhakta is our eternal guide. And oftentimes that is our spiritual master in this world. That's why we are very deeply attached to a spiritual master, because it's quite the case that they are our spiritual guide. I mean, they are our spiritual guide, but the spiritual world guide as well. Just like all of us are probably under the care, under the team of Srila Prabhupada. In the transcendental realm of Rajadham, one should serve the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna with a feeling similar to that of his associates. And one should place himself under the direct guidance of a particular associate of Krishna and should follow in their footsteps. This method is applicable both in the stage of sadhana, spiritual practices, executed while in the stage of bondage, and in the stage of sadhya, God realization. When one is a siddha purusha, or a spiritually perfect soul. So the guidance is always there, right? Utpatayeva kalpate. I'm trying to remember how that verse starts. Unless we are serving Krishna under the guidance of a devotee, an advanced devotee, our devotional service will most likely be simply an unnecessary disturbance to society, because it's not done, or it's not channeled in a way that's pleasing to Krishna. So both in the stage of sadhana and in the stage of sadhya, this is applicable. As I mentioned, the spiritual master is our guide during the time of sadhana, and very often they're also the guide in the stage of sadhya, or they lead us to someone who is in the same mood that we are meant to be in and can guide us from that time on. So it's not that the spiritual master is not in a very high level of mood. They're in the very high level of mood. But let's say their mood is in serving Krishna as in Madhurya Ras or in Vatsalya Ras, and their disciples' mood is one in Sakhya Ras. So they may guide them to a devotee in Sakhya Ras, so they may cultivate that mood more. And that's why we see in our parampara also that we have Diksha Gurus, but we also have a Shiksha line. Like Bhaktivinoda Thakur is Gaur Kishore Das Maharaj, just Shiksha Guru. Similarly, Jagannath Das Babaji is Bhaktivinoda Thakur's Shiksha Guru, because sometimes the connection with the Shiksha Guru may be stronger because of that spiritual connection, right? Because of that spiritual relationship. But in the stage of sadhana, generally it is our Diksha Guru that we are both most closely aligned with. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur has commented as follows upon this verse: one who has not yet developed interest in Krishna consciousness should give up all material motives and train his mind by following the progressive, regulated principles, namely chanting and remembering Krishna and his name, form, qualities, pastimes, and so forth. In this way, after developing a taste for such things, one should try to live in Vrindavan and pass his time constantly remembering Krishna's name, fame, pastimes, and qualities under the direction and protection of an expert devotee. Very important part here, under the direction and protection of an expert devotee. This is the sum and substance of all instruction regarding the cultivation of devotional service. So after developing a taste for these things, one should try to live in Vrindavan and constantly remember. So this protection of a devotee, the direction and protection is very important, because that's what, there's 1,000 ways we can fail in spiritual life. There's 1,000 pitfalls. We can become artificial. We can become a sahaja. We can become proud. We can become, and unless we have that guide, we will most likely slip. And no one has been successful, Prabhupada says, without serving a pure devotee of the Lord. Without service means hearing, associating, all those things. No one has made it to Krishna, Prabhupada writes in one place. Because, because they're the ones who lead the way in this in this unknown territory, in this unknown land that we are embarking on. Embarking on. In the neophyte stage, one should always engage in hearing Krishna Katha. This is called Shravana Dasha, the stage of hearing. By constantly hearing the transcendental holy name of Krishna and hearing of his transcendental form, qualities, and pastimes, one can attain to the stage of acceptance called Varana Dasha. When one attains this stage of Smaranavastha, the stage of remembering, recollection, absorption, meditation, constant remembrance, and trance are the 5 items of progressive Krishna Smarana. And so now we'll go over these things. I have slides on this. At first, remembrance of Krishna may be interrupted at intervals, but later, remembrance proceeds uninterrupted. When remembrance is uninterrupted, it becomes concentrated and is called meditation. When meditation expands and becomes constant, it is called anusmriti. By uninterrupted and unceasing anusmriti, one enters the stage of samadhi or spiritual trance. After smarana dasha or samadhi has fully developed, the soul comes to understand his original constitutional position. At that time, he can perfectly and clearly understand his eternal relationship with Krishna. That is called Sampati Dasha, the perfection of life. Okay, so I'm going to stop here. Now we will see. So this verse is focusing on this point of just fixing our mind on Krishna, right? And so in the Gita also, in texts 8 to 12, Krishna is telling this point, that this regulated practice, as we were discussing, first working for Krishna, then following the regulations of Bhakti Yoga, it's meant to ultimately bring us to the point of just fixing our mind upon Krishna in an undeviated way. Just continuously, constantly fixing our mind upon Krishna. And that is the goal. So, and by going through this yoga ladder, as described in the Gita, first cultivating knowledge, then meditation, then working for Krishna, following the regulated practices of Bhakti Yoga, one comes to the point of spontaneous devotional service, which is fixing the mind on Krishna. And then one can attain one of the 5 rasas. Chaitanya Charitamrita advises those who are neophytes to give up all kinds of motivated desires and simply engage in the regulated devotional service of the Lord according to the directions of Scripture. In this way, a neophyte can gradually develop attachment for Krishna's name, fame, form, qualities, and so forth. When one has developed such attachment, he can spontaneously serve the lotus feet of Krishna, even without following the regulated principles. This stage is called Raga Bhakti, or devotional service in spontaneous love. At that stage, the devotee can follow in the footsteps of one of the eternal associates of Krishna in Vrindavan. This is called Raganuga Bhakti. Raganuga Bhakti, or spontaneous devotional service, can be executed in the Shantaras when one aspires to be like Krishna's cows, or the stick or the flute in the hand of Krishna, or the flowers around Krishna's neck. In the Dasyaras, one follows in the footsteps of servants like Chitraka, Patraka, and Raktaka. In the friendly Sakyaras, one can become a friend like Baladeva, Sridham, or Sudama. In the Vatsalyaras, characterized by paternal affection, one may become like Nanda Maharaj and Yashoda. And in Madhuryaras, characterized by conjugal love, one can become like Srimati Radharani or her lady friends, such as Lalita and her serving maids, Manjaris, like Rupa and Rati. This is the essence of all instruction in the matter of devotional service. So how can we follow the residents of Vrindavan while in the stage of practice? So this is where Prabhupada describes the different stages of meditation, which is what we just read. So we read it, but in reading it, we miss things. So this is now step by step. Shravana Dasha, Prabhupada talked about this, right? This was the first stage of Shravana Dasha. Dasha means state of Shravana. This is when we are very seriously hearing about Krishna and Krishna's words, the Bhagavad Gita. This person, he's tuned in, he's always hearing. We should always hear. We should come in the practice of always hearing. We should always have that tape playing, listening to some lecture, listening to some kirtan. And now YouTube has made it more difficult, and it's also made it more easy. It's more difficult because when we open YouTube, there's 15 things to distract us. But it's easy because if we don't get distracted, we can just turn on a narration of the Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, and hear it continuously. The second stage is Varana Dasha. Right? In this stage of Varana Dasha, this stage is
acceptance.
Acceptance. Yes, thank you for reminding me. Yes, this is the stage of acceptance, where by hearing Krishna, by Shravana Dasha, by continuously hearing, we come to this stage of accepting Krishna, of, Krishna becomes our dearmost object of love. spontaneously we become attracted to him. Smaranavastha. Right? This is the stage of continuously remembering Krishna. So from hearing, then there's acceptance. From acceptance, Krishna accepts us within his entourage. He accepts us as one of his devotees. Then one's meditation is on Krishna, one can continuously think of Krishna. Now, the way Prabhupada described it and the way we read it, right, was so nice. He said, one can continuously think of Krishna. One can constantly remember Krishna. Now, just think about it. To constantly remember Krishna is not easy. Right? It's a practice. Try it. Right? For 1 hour, just think of Krishna, remember Krishna. It's very, very hard. Right? That's why when we chant, every 5 seconds, our mind goes somewhere because we cannot think of Krishna. Now, when I was hearing the Chaitanya Bhagavat, it specifically described that Haridas Thakur had the power and the potency to continuously think of Krishna. And that's why he was so special, because he had, it's the extraordinary power to continuously think of Krishna 24 hours a day. So Prabhupada in one place, in one lecture, he writes that if we chant, and while we chant, we think of anything else, right? When we chant, we're thinking of something else, that's an offense to the chanting, right? Because the 11th offense is to be inattentive while chanting the holy name of Krishna. So that's an offense, to chant and to think of something else. Now, Haridas Thakur was constantly chanting. 23 and a half hours a day, he was chanting. And if he was chanting purely, that means that when he was chanting, he was only thinking of Krishna. He wasn't thinking of anything else other than Krishna. And if 23 and a half hours a day, he was just thinking of Krishna, then that means in the remaining half an hour, he must have been thinking of Krishna as well. When he was, brushing his teeth or taking a shower or taking a few drops of milk to sustain himself. Haridas Thakur also, there are times when he was preaching a lot. He was traveling and preaching and all these things. Even during that time, he was continuously thinking of Krishna. So that's Smaranavastha. That is a Smaranavastha. That is the goal. And we can try from our side to think of Krishna. And then we realize actually how neophyte we are in spiritual life. When we think of Krishna, maybe an hour a day, and we struggle even with that, then we realize, okay, I'm not even 1/24th there, right? 1 hour is 1/24th Krishna conscious. So that's the goal. That's as a result of Shravanam and Kirtanam, we should be able to come to the state of Smaranavastha. Always Krishna's within our mind, right? Krishna's fixed there within our mind. We cannot think of anything else. And one thing that really helps in this is preaching Krishna consciousness. When we endeavor to preach Krishna consciousness, then in our conditioned state, where naturally the mind is very passionate, so it always wants to make plans. So when we make plans for Krishna, when we engage that planning for Krishna, then it's a way to trick the mind into thinking of Krishna. Because the mind is such a rascal, it doesn't just focus on Krishna. And so now on this third stage, there's different stages. You might remember, Prabhupada mentioned. The first one is, there's recollection of Krishna, but it's interrupted. This is like the perfect image. So one is thinking of Krishna, but it's interrupted. There's recollection. Oh yeah, I'm chanting. Oh yeah, I'm on my 16th round. And actually, I was supposed to hear the holy name. So at round 16, actually, that's when we chant our best round, is at round 16. Then there's absorption, which is uninterrupted absorption in Krishna. So imagine most of us are just at the first stage. Second is uninterrupted absorption. The third stage is meditation, concentration. The mind is used as a means to attract the Lord, as one attracts a fish to a hook. So first it's uninterrupted in its absorption. Now there's a deep meditation, which is difficult, right? Because One thing is one can be absorbed, and you're absorbed. Okay, I'm cooking for Krishna. But still, the absorption may be uninterrupted, but still, while being absorbed, our meditation on Krishna is not there. The advanced devotee is doing the same service, but their mind is fixed on Krishna. The mind is used as a means to attract the Lord, as one attracts a fish to a hook. Then anusmriti. This is anusmriti, meditation, and then another type of meditation. Let's go back here. The verse, what was it? Interrupted, without interruption, concentrated. When it becomes concentrated, then it's called meditation. When meditation expands and becomes constant, it is called anusmriti. Okay, so even though it's concentrated and it's uninterrupted meditation, that meditation still expands even more and becomes constant. That is called anusmriti. So it's even a deeper meditation. By uninterrupted and unceasing anusmriti, one finally enters the stage of samadhi. So actually, okay, so this meditation stage is not constant. There are times when it is unconstant. So absorption is different than meditation. One may be absorbed, one is serving Krishna all day. That is stage part 2. But then it's not that then one is meditating all day. One is absorbed all day, but the meditation is there at different times. When the meditation becomes constant, then it becomes anusmriti. And when it becomes very constant and very deep, it becomes samadhi. When the mind forcibly is engaged upon the form of the Lord, this is called nirbija yoga or lifeless yoga, for the yogi does not automatically engage in the personal service of the Lord. Samadhi apanadasha. In the beginning, the mind is employed in attracting the form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But in the higher stages, there's no question of using the mind. When one is constantly thinking of the Lord, that is called living yoga. So when we force the mind, force by pushing the mind to think of Krishna, that means forcing. That is called dead yoga. But when it's automatically drawn to Krishna, that is called living yoga, and that is the highest stage of samadhi. So that is what Queen Kunti, she says, Gange Voga Mudanvati, that let my mind be automatically attracted to your lotus feet. Not that sometimes it's attracted, sometimes it is not, but it is automatically attracted to Krishna's lotus feet. When spiritual body descends from the spiritual platform, along with Krishna and his associates, one has spiritual television in the heart and lives in the world while engaging in a spiritual body in perfection. So this is the stage of apanadasha, the stage of samadhi, perfect stage of samadhi, that where one's spiritual body actually descends from the spiritual world and one is constantly absorbed in thinking of Krishna. And then we have the stage of sampati dasha. So this is the living yoga stage. At this stage, inheritance, one clearly and perfectly understands eternal relationship with Krishna. Radha and Krishna come personally, not just in the mind. One lives in the spiritual world and engages the mature body to help conditioned souls. So in the apanadasha stage, the spiritual body descends from the spiritual platform. One has a spiritual television in the heart. Within the mind, one can see the Lord. That's Apanadasha. I mean, that by itself would be more than enough for us, right? But as though that is not enough, at the stage of Sampati Dasha, Radha and Krishna come personally, not just in the mind. One actually sees them, just like we have the pastime of Sanatan Goswami, Rupa Goswami, Raghunath Das Goswami, where Srimati Radharani would actually come to them, would actually, appear before them. And in such a stage, one is completely absorbed in samadhi. So these are the 5 stages of samadhi. The form of the Lord, which was brilliant like lightning, and in which Dhruva, in his mature yogic process, was fully absorbed in meditation, all of a sudden disappeared. Thus Dhruva was perturbed, and his meditation broke. But as soon as he opened his eyes, he saw the Supreme Personality of Godhead, personally present, just as he had been seeing the Lord in his heart. So this is a nice illustration of the difference between Apanadasha and Sampati Dasha. Apanadasha, Sampati Dasha. Apanadasha was first when Dhruva was meditating upon Krishna. He saw Krishna within his heart. And he was completely absorbed in samadhi. Imagine when you were closing your eyes, you see Krishna within your heart. But then, when he opens his eyes, he sees Krishna outside, which is even more superior, right? Krishna's personally present before you. That is Sampati Dasha. So in order to get him to open his eyes, Krishna disappears from within his heart. He disappears, then he's perturbed. He opens his eyes, and there in front of him, he sees Krishna standing there. So the 5th stage is samadhi, and this is like the example that Prabhupada gives, the analogy that he gives is this is like boiling the milk and making it thicker and thicker and thicker until it becomes fully condensed. It becomes fully condensed. So it starts off just as milk, and then it becomes rubbery and the thick sweets that Krishna loves. So this is the essence of this verse. We talked about the 5 stages, all the way leading to samadhi, and then the 2 divisions of samadhi as well. Okay, so this is text 8. Any thoughts, reflections on text 8 before we go on to text 9?
Thank you very much, Prabhuji, for this session. I have one question. What does it mean by living in Vrindavan here?
What does it mean to live in Vrindavan? So
Yeah.
one can live in Vrindavan there's a verse in the Chaitanya Charitamrita where Advaitacharya or Nityananda Prabhu, one of them tells Lord Chaitanya that wherever you are living in Vrindavan. So living in Vrindavan means to enter into the dimension of Vrindavan, so to say, the consciousness, the place of Vrindavan. So that's the true Vrindavan. I mean, that's actually living in Vrindavan, is when we are connected with Vrindavan. We're fully absorbed in Vrindavan in our state of consciousness. However, living in Vrindavan also means living in the physical place of Vrindavan, right? Living in Vrindavan means, okay, living in Vrindavan Dham. Sometimes when we are there, then we are living on Vrindavan, right? So we're not living in Vrindavan, but we're living on Vrindavan. We are in Vrindavan Dham, but we cannot enter into it because we're on it. We're not in it, right? But living in Vrindavan means this smarana dasha, right? When we are deep in remembrance of Krishna, then we're actually associating with Krishna and his associates. Thank you, Prabhu. Nice question. Nice question. You're muted, Prabhu.
Oh, sorry, Prabhuji. I have one more question, but I will wait if anybody has any other questions.
Sure, go ahead. Go ahead. We might as well do. Yes, go ahead.
Sure. The one thing that is puzzling is, right, Prabhuji, in ISKCON, different gurus operate in a different way. In some places, in some gurus, they have systematically assigned Shiksha Guru, they have mentor, counselor, and everything. They have whole system, when we talk about the guidance here, the whole system to guide from the top down or bottom up, right? But in some places, we don't have that. But that's what is puzzling me. Particularly, when the Guru Maharaj is not there, right? How do we get the guidance, right? So if you're not, sometimes the guidance happens within some group, but we don't get that guidance. But how do we get those guidance? That is always puzzling me. That is the question that I always ask myself. And how do we get those guidance, right?
Yes, Prabhu. No, actually, and this is a challenge, right? This is the challenge. When the spiritual master is there, then the guidance is very clear. Either it's a spiritual master or the spiritual master, you ask him and he says, well, take guidance from such person. So one thing is that before the spiritual master departs, they may give us some indication. After I depart, you can take guidance from such and such person. But oftentimes they leave it open. Or even if they ask us to take guidance from someone, that person is not available, or we are in a distant place, or we need more guidance. And so my personal experience is that if we are sincerely practicing Krishna consciousness, Krishna sends someone, right? Krishna actually sends the representative of the Guru, and we can very clearly understand that I'm getting spiritual nourishment from this person in a very deep way, and this person is within the bounds of my spiritual master's instructions, like within the purview of what they instructed us. So, this person is within, Prabhupada's movement, ISKCON. This person is serving very nicely. They're well recognized by all the Vaishnavas. So not just what's in our heart, but also there's external symptoms that this person is very spiritually elevated, and that person is willing to reach out to us and spend time with us. Right? So both things have to be there. Someone may be very, very exalted, but if we cannot connect with them, then we cannot receive guidance from them. Like you're saying, right? We know, okay, this person is self-realized. They can take me to the next level. But if I can't actually reach them, then I need to find someone who is also accessible. And like you're saying, therefore the spiritual masters often give, shiksha gurus and shiksha, guidance through their disciples, senior disciples, or through god brothers. But in the absence of that, we actually pray to Krishna, because Krishna is within our heart. He's a super soul, and he tells us, he sends someone to give that guidance. He really does. Like, it actually will manifest, like, okay, this person is here and they're available, and they're very they're helping me come to the next stage of my devotional practice.
Thank you.
Yes, so there's actually no shortage of that in our movement, right? It's just a matter of finding it. You are living close to New Vrindavan, right? So you have New Vrindavan there, and there's and our movement actually, sometimes I find also the opposite problem is also there, that there's so much guidance, there's so many elevated souls, and it's hard to figure out, okay, where should I take guidance and what should I skip, right? There's now, especially in the world of online, there's so many people who regularly do a class that we can attend, and very advanced souls. And so one has to choose, okay, this class or this class, like this. Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. But it's within the heart. Prabhupada says, actually, the spiritual master reveals within the heart. So if we're really sincere, Krishna will help us. Yes, Prabhu, go ahead.
Thank you.
Also, it all starts with association, right? The more you associate, the more you will find with whom you can associate better, and then you will see the qualities manifest, because Guru Maharaj always empowers certain souls that they are basically guiding the other neophyte or other devotees who are joining the movement. So association is the key. The more we associate and the more we hear, even in the Navda Bhakti, Shravanam is the first step. So the more we hear, the more clarity will be there in our mind.
Nice point, Prabhu. Yes. The more we hear, like we're Smarana Dasha, that's the first stage, right? When we're continuously hearing, the mind becomes purified, the heart, the whole existence become purified, and then things become very clear also. Like it's true for myself also. I noticed that, like things are unclear when we are kind of the consciousness is not clear. So our first Shiksha Guru is Srila Prabhupada. And when we engage more with Srila Prabhupada and we hear and we hear and we hear, then things start to become manifest in a way that they didn't before. Yes, that also is the point. Yes, thank you. Rupa Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, it was nice lectures. I really enjoyed it. The one thing I wanted to ask you is how we are engaged with the different things in this world, ourselves and our family and other thing. So you had mentioned when you were doing the surveys and chanting, we should focus on 100%, not think about anything. But if you can actually guide me for that, how do we control our mind to not to do that? Because it's really hard. It comes when you sit down and doing things, it comes a million things on your head. So if
Yes.
you can guide me.
And Arjun has the same question from Krishna, right? In chapter 6, it's called Dhyana Yoga. Krishna describes the whole process of meditation to him. And at the end, Arjun says, Sorry, Krishna, chanchalam hi mana Krishna, pramati balavadridam. I'm sorry, this mind is more difficult to control than the wind. The mind is too chanchal, it's too flickering, and this is impractical for me. So I give up on this, right? Even before I try. He says, I'm not going to do this. And to this, what does Krishna respond? He says, no, abhyasa yoga yuktena, that it is possible. It must be done. How? The most important thing, abhyasa, by practice. By practice, by practice. And maybe I think Krishna wants to teach me this thing or bring this idea in my heart, because this is in the same week. Interesting thing, third time we're discussing this. I'm discussing this in a different context. So abhyasa is so true. We see this in the material world as well. Srila Prabhupada gives the example that in India, when a young boy needed to become strong, right? When they were basically weightlifting, then there was a very nice system that they used. Like today, you go to the gym and you work out for 2 hours every day, and then you get some muscles. But in the previous times, they had a very scientific way of making a young man very strong. What he would do is, once he was like 12 years old, he would start lifting a baby bull. Right? You have a baby bull, he would lift it every day. And it's just a baby. You can lift a baby bull, right? And he would do it every day. Now, after 1 year, how much does a bull grow? That baby bull becomes like big bull, right? But he did it the previous day, so every day he's doing it. So then after 1 year, he's lifting up this big bull. And then after 4 or 5 years, you have a full-size bull. Now, how much does a full-size bull weigh? Maybe half a ton, 200, 300 pounds. And then this boy, he can lift up that full bull. All the weightlifters of modern days wouldn't match up to this young boy. And how does he do it? Every day, he just lifts the bull. And he does it every single day. And one day, he can lift that huge bull. That's the power of practice, right? And so the same thing, that's why Rupa Goswami in the previous verse was saying daily. If every day we just chant some or the other, it doesn't make sense. Our mind is going here and there every day. But if we did it yesterday, we can do it today. If every day we just sit and chant, then one day, 40 years later, 20 years later, that chanting becomes spontaneous. It becomes perfected. I had one professor. He was an electrical engineering professor. Again, I gave this example yesterday also. He would write books and books on electrical engineering. Like he had 6, 7 books out, and he was a famous author. And there's one thing to write books about, the Hardy Boys. There's another thing to write books on, on electrical engineering, semiconductors, like such a technical subject matter. You read 5 pages, it gives you a headache. So we asked him once, how do you write these books? He was also a professor, he had a family, all these things. And he said, I just sit on my kitchen table and I write for 6 to 8 hours. I just sit on my table and I just write every day for 6 to 8 hours. And we said, how do you write for 6 to 8 hours? Like, we can't read this stuff for even an hour. How can you sit and write? And he said, just practice. Initially, I started writing 1 hour every day. And even that was hard. Then I would write 2 hours a day, then 3 hours a day. He said, now I can write 6 to 8 hours a day, no problem. I can sit in one place without moving, straight, just write 6 to 8 hours a day. So same thing in our spiritual life. Right now, it's so hard to chant for 10 minutes. Like, we chant, devotees practicing, we chant 2 hours a day. And when we go and we ask people, can you chant 1 round? They're just like, oh, this is too hard, Prabhuji. How do you chant 1 round? And we're just thinking like 10 minutes, like, is it really hard? But it's actually hard for them. And you do it to 2 rounds, and then sometime afterwards they'll come back and say, Prabhu, I just do it, 2 was too much. I just came back down to 1 round. But 1 round, I can do it steadily, right? So even ourselves, like we've made it to 16 rounds, right? Just by practice. But if we, same thing in spiritual life, we practice every day and we chant and we read every day and we keep increasing it, then soon we can do it with steadiness and concentration 4 or 5 hours a day, and just not feel that it's a stretch, but feel a taste for it. Yes.
Thank you, Prabhu.
So we have to do it as much as we feel comfortable and do that every single day. And then what is uncomfortable will become comfortable. So if we're comfortable with 1 hour every day, let's say, we do that every day. And then, after 3 months, we do 1 hour and 15 minutes. And then we do 1 hour and 30 minutes. Like that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Pramataji. Yes. Nice point, Ajay. Go ahead.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Pranam Rishprapaja Gurudev. Very nice lecture, Prabhuji, as usual. So I just wanted to clarify some. So this first stage is Shravana Dasha, right? And then it's Varana Dasha, and then it's Smarana Vastha. So Smarana Vastha, as I understood, has 3 stages or 3 parts.
Yes.
Which is okay, interrupted, uninterrupted, and then the Anusmriti.
Yes. Recollection, which is interrupted, absorption, uninterrupted, meditation, concentration, and then Anusmriti. So 4 stages. Okay. And then the 5th one is Samadhi.
And then Samadhi also has 2, which is Sampati Dasha.
Yes.
Okay. And also, as Prabhuji was saying about the guidance of how even when the Guru left and how do we get guidance? So I was thinking of the Vapu Vani concept, that how if even the Guru is not here, physically present, we can get it through the books, which is the Vani and the teachings.
Yes. Very wonderful point. And before my Guru Maharaj left, it was interesting, the last trip that he had, almost every class he was talking about the importance of Varni. And we were just like, why is he talking about this so much? But I remember in Toronto, he was giving the class, it was on Varni, taking shelter of Varni, because it's a fact that the Varni becomes very important, and it becomes our connection to our spiritual master. At the same time, we also need, a living guide. That is also very important and very helpful. But if we really take shelter of the Varni, then it really helps us. Yes.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you. Thank you. Yashoda Vatsala Prabhu. I think twice you've raised your hand and brought it back down.
Yeah.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Yeah, Prabhu, I think I'm not sure. Krishna Prabhuji, Krishna Prabhupada.
Hare
Prabhuji,
Krishna.
I don't know. Like, if I think I asked this earlier and maybe it skipped my mind. But what is the samadhi of the material mind?
What is the summary?
Samadhi of the material mind.
Oh, samadhi. What is a samadhi? So the mind is originally spiritual. The mind is actually a spiritual sense. All of our senses are originally spiritual. But those senses, the mind becomes covered. So it becomes contaminated by material consciousness. So that spiritual mind becomes a material mind, which is essentially a spiritual mind covered by material conditioning. When we scrub that material mind, then what is left is a spiritual mind. So there's no samadhi with a material mind. Once the mind is purified, that mind is in samadhi at the lotus feet of Krishna. And that mind is our spiritual mind. It's not that we get a new mind all of a sudden. The spiritual form here it's being described descends from the spiritual world. At the same time, the soul is also a spiritual form. So in one sense, it descends, but in the other part, there's, the soul is the soul. It's a spiritual form. So it becomes manifest in some ways. So it's not that we get, a new mind, like a, upgraded hard drive when we get a new mind when we surrender to Krishna. Prabhupada says very clearly in another place, there's no question of a new mind. The mind itself becomes purified. And then he gives the example of the hand and the glove. That when you have the glove around your hand, you have the glove. And you say, only when you remove the glove can you touch me and feel something. So you say, okay, you have to remove the glove and get a new hand. Well, true and not true. You remove the glove, then that is your hand. So Prabhupada said, so one disciple was asking exactly the same question. It was like a morning walk that you are asking that. But Prabhupada, like, where does the spiritual mind comes and what happens material mind? He says, no, there's no question of changing. He says, it's just purified. You have to, by the cleansing process, you gradually remove the glove and the glove comes out. What's left is your spiritual senses.
So the samadhi is kind of, for the material mind, right?
No.
But
samadhi can only happen once the materialism of the mind is completely gone and what's left is your spiritual mind. Otherwise, samadhi cannot happen.
Exactly. So, okay, got it, Prabhuji. Thank you. I realize now. Yeah.
So therefore, only when the material mind is purified, such that there's only a spiritual mind, can you enter samadhi. So the samadhi is the fixing. Now, one can be in in a stage of samadhi where, like sometimes meditation, where one's completely absorbed in something else other than Krishna. But that's not real samadhi. That's not the samadhi that is being spoken of here. Yes. Okay, Shinitai Charan Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Dandavat Pranam.
Dandavat Pranam.
Thank you for, as usual, delineating very kind of intricate subject matter. So one of the 5 limbs of bhakti is Mathura Vas, right?
Yes.
So that is that physical living there, or is it like the one mentioned in the 8th verse, like thus you live in, one should reside in Vraja?
Yes, it refers to physically living there also, because that's Mathura Vas. That's, also in the 5 most potent items of devotional service. Rupa Goswami is describing this for the sadhaka. Now, for the person on the sadhana platform, mentally they're not living there. So the reason when he says, living in the dham, it means living in the dham because mentally they're not living there. So it must refer to living means physically. However, living in the dham physically, even physically, also doesn't just mean Vrindavan Dham in India, but Prabhupada describes that living in the dham also means living in the temple. So all of his temples are places of pilgrimage, or making your home into a temple. that can also become a dham. So Rupa Goswami's instruction is that one of the 5 most potent items of devotional service is to make wherever you are living your residence into a holy place, because then you can concentrate upon Krishna. Right? If we are living, in a dorm room, in a university, right? Some devotees, young devotees, try to do that, and next to us are boys and girls, drinking, sleeping with each other, this, that, then we will not be successful in spiritual life. Not a single person has come out successful. There's always going to be some fall down because we're not living in the dham. We're living in the material atmosphere. But if we are living in a place that's auspicious and protected, where the devotees are living, then reading Bhagavatam, chanting the holy name, serving the devotees, worshipping the deity, all become possible. Like when I was studying in England, then the students had a devotee house. I still remember this. And outside we'd go and all these, you had to, so much Maya is there, materialism is there, all these things. But coming back to the devotee house, one of the rooms in the devotee house was a temple room. And some of the students had their deities, and there's some pictures and instruments were there. And that was the place where we did kirtan, a morning program. So coming back to that was like, it protected us. It was like, okay, we're living in a place that at least here, it's like, you don't have to worry about material energy attacking you all the time, right? So that's like an example of living in the dham and still being able to go to school or college, right? Because if one lives in Vrindavan, how can one attend the university? So one can do that by living at least with devotees, and that's the holy place.
Thank you, Prabhu. So just a follow-up question. Generally, I've heard like living or having born in Vrindavan or living in Vrindavan, or one leaves the body in Vrindavan, they go back to Godhead. So that's again the physical Vrindavan, right?
So yes, that is a physical Vrindavan. However, if they're advanced, then they're also in touch with the spiritual Vrindavan, which is connected, right? So a person who's going to Vrindavan, who's living in Vrindavan and performing sinful activities, is only in the physical Vrindavan. That's happening today, right? They even have like a water park now in Vrindavan. There's no water to drink, but they have a water park there in Vrindavan with slides and these things. And those people are just on the land. They're getting some minuscule benefit. They're also doing offenses, so they're getting a lot of offenses. But one is getting some spiritual credit for being in the area of Vrindavan. However, the more spiritually advanced we are, the more we are also in touch with Krishna, right? So we're actually in touch with the consciousness of Vrindavan, which means going deeper into the Dham. So an example is, Prabhupada gives the example that a fly sits on the hand of a king. That fly is touching the king, but there's no realization of the king. There's no real association of the king. Whereas the servants, the attendants of the king, they are not even touching the king, but they are in touch with him. The queen is touching the king and also very deeply in touch with the consciousness of the king. So all of them are in touch with the king. All of these people are on Vrindavan. But one of them is sitting there like a fly, simply passing stool on the king. And the others are actually taking advantage of the association and going deeper into the dham. So similarly, some people come there, they just, perform sinful activities and leave. Others are actually trying to relish the mood of Vrindavan and enter into the place and into Krishna's land. This is Krishna's home. They're trying to actually become qualified to be invited. That's the stage of acceptance, right? Invited into Krishna's home.
Jai Prabhu. Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhu. Very nice question. Ritesh Prabhu?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandot Pranam. Thank you for a wonderful class.
Thank you.
Prabhuji, I had a question. So, Today we discussed a lot about continuously chanting about Krishna's name, trying to remember him for the whole day. So, s- s- sometimes I mean, in few places in Prabhupada's life, in his preachings, he has said that rather than trying to chant 24 hours, it's better if we could chant our rounds and then do more preaching activity. So,
Yes.
what's your thought on this?
Yes, I mean, that's exactly very nicely said, because when we are not so spiritually advanced, then the goal is, right? Rupa Goswami says there's only one rule: always remember Krishna, only one regulation: never forget Krishna. So the goal of chanting also is to always remember Krishna. The goal of everything is to always remember Krishna. So if our mind becomes absorbed in Krishna more by preaching than only chanting with our beads, then we should engage in preaching. Why? Because when we're chanting on our beads and we're doing more rounds than 16, and we're not able to control the mind, then the mind is somewhere else. We're chanting, but the mind is completely somewhere else. Whereas when we are engaged in preaching Krishna consciousness, our mind is absorbed in planning and thinking about how I can serve Krishna. So Prabhupada says in the neophyte stage, one needs a variety of devotional practices in order to think of Krishna always. This is exact words. He says, in our neophyte stage, we need many things. Because the mind is chanchal, we must think of Krishna always, but the way we do it is by tricking the mind. Okay, I'll chant for 2 hours, then I'll read. Okay, it's something different, right? We're still reading about Krishna, but now we can, use the eyes more rather than the ears more before we're chanting. Then once we're tired reading, we can't chant and read all the time. Then, okay, I'm gonna, go and plan a festival for Krishna. So I get to use my laptop and my phone, which I'm very attached to, but I can use it in Krishna service. So Prabhupada says we need a variety of services to think of Krishna always. As we advance, we can just have one service and think of Krishna always. Because the attachment or the attraction is not the mode of work or the work, but the attachment is Krishna. So then the work doesn't matter. What matters is my focus on Krishna. And in the initial stage also, we're serving Krishna, but then we're not thinking of Krishna so much. Right? So when I'm planning the festival, then I'm absorbed. That was the difference that we had pointed out. But I'm not meditating on Krishna, because I'm thinking, this person offended me, that happened, all these. So I'm doing service to Krishna, I'm absorbed, but I'm not thinking of Krishna. But again, as we advance, we can increase the hearing and chanting more so that we can hear of Krishna always. Right? So to the degree of our advancement, to that degree, we chant more. And this is why one advanced devotee who chants 50 rounds every day, I asked him, so how do you do it? When did you decide to do it? Why did you decide? Like how do you figure out when you should do it? That's your question. Like, when is that turning point that now from 16 I should do 50 rounds? He said it comes naturally. He said you don't have to plan how to do it, but when your taste for chanting increases, your service doesn't decrease, but your chanting increases. You just sleep less, you waste less time, and you're just chanting, and it happens naturally. So so to answer your question, actually, then in very practical terms, it's both. We don't do either or. We also serve and we also chant, because so that's one point. And the second point is that um, there's also power to blessings, right? So one thing is about engaging in the process to think of Krishna, but the other purpose of service is we do devotional service because our mind is not fixed on Krishna, we're not advanced. However, if we serve a devotee of Krishna, right? Prabhupada had a mission. If we help fulfill his mission, then we get the blessings of a devotee. And even though we're not thinking of Krishna, but when we're trying to please a devotee, we get that blessings. And when we get that blessing, Prabhupada writes, then it's very easy to remember Krishna. Then automatically it becomes very easy to remember him. So there's two ways of doing it. One is through your own practice and mercy also, but through constant hearing of Krishna. But another way is, if I get the blessing by the mercy of a devotee, the same rules and regulations, Prabhupada said, become easy. They become effortless.
Okay, thank you, Prabhuji. Very nicely explained. Thank you so much.
Nice questions. Thank you. Okay, so I think Haripriya is not here today because she's in Atlanta having a good time there. So we don't have a summary. I would have done a second verse today. I just feel one verse is less. We could have done 8 and 9. However, I need to be at another Zoom call at 8:30. So we only have 5 minutes, and I don't think we have enough time to complete a chapter, a verse in 5 minutes. So any other questions, final question? I have 5 more minutes, and then we can leave. Those of you who took the exam, I'm still working on your exams. I'm very sorry I'm late. But what can I do? It's been really busy. Hopefully this weekend I'll get some time. Okay, so we'll stop here then. Thank you, everyone. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Krishna Krishna
Hare
Prabhu.
Krishna. Thank you so much, Prabhuji.
Vaishnavendra ki jai. Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.